BoLS fans, AdamHarry here, and I'm back with a very special retro corner review. Today we are going to be looking at the Shadow War Armageddon rulebook, but I wanted to flip back through basically where this book came from, which the rule set is very much Necromunda. The rule set is very much these two books in this book. But there's a third book here that a lot of folks aren't talking about, and that's the Codex Armageddon book. This was basically 3rd edition going into 4th edition 40K, but this book owes a lot from these three particular books. So we're going to be flipping kind of back and forth. I'm going to be showing off some stuff in this book that's related to these three. So the first section we're going to flip through. I'm going to show off the table of contents real quick for this one. So let me zoom in here and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So this is obviously Shadow War Armageddon. It takes place during the Third War for Armageddon, which if you're familiar with the background, the lore of the history of Armageddon, that is when Ghazghkull Thrak is back. Again, this is his now second bout at trying to take over Armageddon. That's what this whole first section is about. It's about 20 pages or so of background of the whole conflict and what's going on here too. Now once we get to the core rules here and the advanced rules there, those are definitely Necromunda. The armory, pretty much everything else is from Necromunda. Even creating a kill team, you can see a lot of that stuff comes from the source book for Necromunda. And then of course the missions and the campaigns and all that fun stuff too. Special offered are a little bit different. We won't touch on some of these things, but I do want to show them off. So what am I talking about with the background lore for Armageddon? Exactly what it sounds like. This covers the different wars for Armageddon. There's actually 3 different ones. The first 4 were first war for Armageddon technically was deleted from Imperial records due to the fact that it involved some Grey Knights, Khorne invasion, bloodletters, and pretty messy stuff. But the everyone talks about the second war of Armageddon. That is when Ghazghkull Thrak shows up. The Orc Warlord shows up trying to take over this the planet of Armageddon, and he is defeated by Commissar Yark, who's able to mount a defense and basically beat back the Orc hordes. He had some help, but he's the Commissar Yark is the big hero. You know, in the background, he like loses a hand and it gets a power claw from the orcs and uses that, and etc. etc. Well, the third war is round 2. Thrak is back. He's got some upgrades. Yark's back. He's got some upgrades, and of course, there's a ton of stuff going on here. So I'm gonna leave this page here for a second, and we're gonna flip over and I'll show where a lot of this stuff comes from. This, of course, is Codex Armageddon. It's basically the history. It talks about again the first war, the second war, and all that stuff of Armageddon. They don't really talk about the first war too much again, but they do mention how this is the second time for Armageddon. But if you've ever been curious as to see exactly how these events kind of played out, that's what this book has. And it talks about all the different, basically the different heroes from both sides. You've got Archimedes, Ghazghkull, of course, Commissar Yark, Admiral Parl, and then of course it also has the Orc Speed Freak list in there, which was pretty baller at the time. I'm not gonna lie. Had the Still Legions list. It also had the Salamanders and the Black Templar. This was one of the first books that actually had rules for those cats, which was pretty sweet. And then this was also when we got introduced to the newest version of Ghazghkull, which has been around now for over 15 years at this point. Good times. And then, of course, all the other participating chapters, too. But it's just neat to go back through. And if you have these old books, that's why I like the physical media, is because short of anything, you know, disastrous happening, I won't ever not have access to this book. So hopefully no fire, flood, anything like that. But you get the idea. The map you can see, and actually this is why I kind of wanted to pull this up, was to show off these maps. These are not new. In case you were wondering, there's a whole Arctic zone down here, the fire waste up here, but you can see that these maps are essentially the exact same. So it's been a while, but they're back. So that's why I wanted to show this off in comparison with the Shadow War Armageddon. And again, it goes through here all the different fighting people here, the two combatants basically. Astro Militarum and everything like that. The battle for Hive Archeon. This is the big hive that you're fighting over. It talks about the structure of a hive, which we're gonna come back to this here. Matter of fact, let's just do that now. The structure of a hive, I believe, can be found in the source book. If there was a picture in here, it might have been in the rulebook actually, but there it is. That's what I was looking for. This is Hive Primus, not on Necromunda. It's not supposed to be the same thing, but essentially that's the same thing. It even has a basic breakdown as well. Looking at those two hives, you can see the shape is basically the same. It's even got the little the wall here where it's got sections in the wall. It almost looks like the same picture. They just flipped it around a little bit. Even the underhive here is mentioned, and then yeah, so that's where that comes from. So if you're curious about the history of that stuff, and then of course the gangers, the Dizidins, citizens, but they're Desi instead. The underhive, yeah. And how they fight. It's a slightly different structure than in Necromunda in terms of the gangs per se, but based on what we've discovered, you could very, very, very easily translate a lot of the stuff from the Necromunda books here, as far as making a game gangs, to this book. They might be a little underpowered slightly. You could, if you basically remove credits, the cost of credits for this one, and just translate that to points, you can create essentially the same gang. Doing a longer campaign structure using these two books would probably be better. One of the big differences folks are going to notice when they get a hold of Shadow War Armageddon, if they have these old Necromunda books, what they're going to notice is the pre and post game sequences are much faster for Shadow War Armageddon, and I think it's actually better for shorter campaigns. But you do miss out, because of that streamlining this, you do miss out on some of the, let's call it more intricate things that can happen in terms of like leveling up and things like that. There's less charts, there's no experience tables, you just kind of gain, one guy can level up basically at the end of a fight. The serious injury chart is very much condensed down to just the essence of this chart. But you know, the trading post stuff is all gone too out of this book, which is a little disappointing. But if you think of it in terms of like, this game is supposed to be a fast league style game. Again, the league is supposed to play till the first person, whoever gets 15 Promethean caches, wins. They win the game. They win the league, and then you can just kind of start over and go again. Whereas Necromunda, you could just keep playing. There was really no, long term. You could keep going. So, yeah, I want to touch on some of the core rules real quick. That's everything you're going to need. Characteristics tests. That's nothing crazy there. I do want to show off the shooting stuff, and again, it's very, very similar to the Necromunda rule set. One of the things that is a little different, though, determining who you can shoot. You fire a fighter, unless you have a special rule, must shoot at the closest enemy that they can see. Or if there's two enemies that are either equidistant, or one of them is outside of cover and one of them is closer, then you can shoot at the farther away target if it's an easier shot. So there are some different rules for choosing what to shoot at. The hit modifiers are all back and things like that. So partial cover, in cover. There's overwatch penalties. Shooting at somebody that's charging you. If the target is ran in their previous movement phase. Smaller targets. There's not really a lot of small targets, but as far as like building your kill teams, and then of course shooting at large target, you get +1. Weapons have a short range, long range, which we've touched on before, and that just adds to your modifier. And then of course the hitting the target, things like that. So you need to add up all your modifiers, and then that'll give you your target number. You need to roll meet or beat to successfully hit something. Another thing that's changed up for shooting is the here's the pinning rules and stuff like that. But the thing that's changed up the most, I think, one of the biggest changes is actually the sustained shooting rules here. The sustained shooting rules basically, you just use a D3 shot. There's no more jams. So they got rid of jams, but each shot you do have to roll to see if you hit. Even if the target that you're shooting at goes down in the first shot or two, if you have more shots, you still have to roll to see if those hit. You're rolling to see an ammo check, essentially. So ammo checks happen on a 6-up. If you do happen to hit with a 6, you do count as hitting still, and you resolve that attack. But at the end, you have to make an ammo check to see if you shot your last shot. Overwatch is also a big deal in this game because most games should be pretty thick on the cover, around the board. Overwatch is a key component, but it only works on your front 90-degree arc, which is very, very important. Folks at home, you will want to have a way to basically mark your models to show which facing is front. When I played, we usually went based on either the model's head or the direction their gun barrel was pointing if we didn't have marks on the base. I recommend you pick one with your opponent, talk before the game starts, that way you're all on the same page. But when you're moving and shooting, everything else is 360. That's another change from the Necromunda rules. So you can see those here actually. Ammo rolls, yeah. There's the shooting cover, all that stuff's back here again. Some of the ranges, most of them are actually really the same, but there might be some minor tweaks. Obviously, this one's gonna supersede the old Necromunda rules, but shooting, again, they have the 90-degree thing here. That's changed. It's assumed that the models are their heads on a swivel, so they're looking around, they're looking for targets when you're moving, and so you basically have 360-degree shot, except for Overwatch, which I think cleans it up pretty good. You do have, again, this same kind of situation from the old Necromunda rules, shooting at the closest target. Because A is behind cover and it's technically a harder shot, the model can then shoot at B instead. So unless you have a special rule or something that modifies that. And then again, I loved how they did this for in cover, partial cover, and out in the open. All those rules. The injury table is pretty much the same in Shadow War Armageddon. Pinning is a big deal. If you get shot at, if you get hit, you basically get knocked over and you are placed face up, and you've been pinned by enemy fire. Even if you don't happen to take any damage, it's still a big deal. And then there's also rules for shooting at downed models and things like that, or shooting at pinned fighters, and yeah, all that stuff's pretty much the same. There's templates, again, those are back. And then Overwatch, again, have changed a little bit. Yeah, gonna move on. There's a bunch of extra rules here too. Matter of fact, let me pause real quick. I'm gonna show you off one more thing here. Well, maybe not one more thing, but a couple more things anyway. First off, hand-to-hand combat stuff here. I've showed this off before from the Necromunda side of things, but here's the new charts. How you do a fight, a typical attack sequence, things like that. So fighting with two weapons and all that interesting stuff there. This does use a combat score system. So if you're a veteran of maybe fantasy, Warhammer Fantasy, or if you played Necromunda, this is all going to be very familiar. You're going to old school fantasy, even not even current, but basically your combat resolution. So both players are going to roll a d6 equal to the fighter's attacks characteristics. So if you have 2 attacks, you're rolling 2d6. If you have 5 attacks, you're rolling 5d6. You pick up the single highest die and add that to your weapon skill, and then you compare those two numbers. There are modifiers, which we'll get to, but that's basically what you're doing. So you want to roll high for your attacks characteristics, and then you want to add your weapon skill to determine the winner. Whoever wins, you compare the combat scores. The difference is the number of hits the winner inflicts upon the loser. You roll the wound, and for each hit and saving throws and resolves injuries. That stuff hasn't really changed, but that combat score is going to be really weird. To determine the winner, you're going to add up the dice. If you roll a 1, that counts as a fumble. So if one person is the attacker, the other person is the defender. If the defender rolls 2 1s, the attacker gets a +1 for each one of those fumbles. A critical hit is each additional roll of a 6 that you get on your attack roll adds +1 to your combat resolution. So if you roll 2 6s, you get a +2 to your attack sequence or attack score modifier. If you charge, you get a +1. If you're higher up, if you're fighting on different levels and you have the high ground Anakin, you get +1. If your fighter is carrying a heavy weapon or other heavy piece of equipment, you subtract 1. Or if you're fighting, if you're charged over an obstacle or somebody that's behind cover, you subtract 1. And there are other ways to do that. There are rules for fighting multiple opponents in a single combat, which I have talked about in previous articles, but it's a little complicated. This game system is definitely better for one-on-one, maybe up to 2-on-1 combats, but when you start getting into big 3-on-3 scrums, things get a little confusing, just a little cluttered, but I do enjoy this. It does feel more epic, and there's more of a narrative at play. There's also a chance that the poorer fighter in close combat can actually win with a series of, if they get lucky, if the attacker rolls a lot of fumbles and the lesser fighter rolls a couple of crits, it can balance out pretty quick. So that's pretty interesting. The next thing I wanted to show off was just there are advanced rules and things like that as well. So you can fall if you're on a guide, if you're within 1 inch of a ledge and you get shot, or if you are with 1 inch of a ledge and you are in hand-to-hand combat and you fall, there's an initiative test involved. You do take damage from that, other fighters and things like that. You can also jump across things. There's more advanced rules, but I just wanted to show that off. And there's a lot of really cool shots of the models and artwork in here. Here's a quick look at the weapon armory. And again, you've probably seen the reference sheets, which we'll actually show off here at the end here. But it's got your breakdown of the weapons here. There's a handful of different types: hand-to-hand combat weapons, pistols, basic weapons, special weapons, heavy weapons, grenades. Hand-to-hand combat weapons, those are going to be your power axes, your power swords, knives, shivs, power claws, etc., etc. Anything you use in close combat, chain swords. Pistols, again, pretty much know if you play 40k or Necromunda or pretty much any GW game what a pistol would be. It's going to be in the weapon profile. Bolt pistols, if you're playing Space Marine Scouts, you can actually use those in hand-to-hand combat and we'll give you a bonus. Basic weapons, those includes the generally like the rifle type weapons, so like a bolter, slugga, stuff like that for Space Marines and Orcs. Special weapons, those are going to be your melta-gun, your plasma guns, flamers, things like that. Heavy weapons, that's your big guns, your heavy bolter, missile launcher, heavy stubba, all those fun things. And then grenades, of course, crack, frag, melta bombs, things like that. Yeah, there's a quick look at some of the weapon profiles as well. Let me pause and we'll jump ahead to another section. One of the things I wanted to show off for sure was there's a whole section for specialized equipment, but I'm a big fan of the photo visor. If you're playing Space Marine Scouts, you definitely want to run your guys with a photo visor. I'm only going to show this one off because I think it's so cool and I feel like it's a little cheaty, so I want to tell as many people as possible about it so that you're not caught off guard. But if you're playing against Scouts, definitely watch out for these. Photo visor is just a special visor that enhances the vision in poor light. But basically, if the fighter is stationary and equipped with a photo visor, it reduces the penalty when shooting at a model in cover by 1. So partial cover is essentially ignored, and being fully in cover is only a -1 instead of a -2. Pretty big deal in a game with a ton of cover running around. Watch out for those Scouts who are not moving with photo visors. There's other things too to get bonuses to hit: red dot laser sights, telescopic sights. If you played Necromunda, a lot of that stuff's going to sound very, very familiar. All right, let's hop over to building a kill team real quick. Building a kill team, I think, in Shadow War Armageddon is actually a lot easier than the rules for building a kill team in the Necromunda source book. The only reason I say that is because it's essentially like list building in 40k. There's a much smaller amount of stuff to buy. For example, going through the source book in Necromunda at the trading post, trying to find stuff. The rare trade chart was it was fun, but there's a lot of stuff that, there's no territory tables. It's all Prometheum caches and buying stuff that's a certain point value. So it's just easier, I think, to build. Also, experience tables are gone, and you don't have to worry about that as much when you're doing your campaign stuff. The gang recruitment is basically the same. You have 1,000 Gilder credits to spend. In Shadow War Armageddon, you have 1,000 points to spend. There's fewer restrictions, but you do have restrictions. It's going to depend on the kill team you're building. It'll tell you your minimums and stuff like that. The leaders and stuff like that, depending on your kill team, are going to cost more points, obviously. Your gang leaders are probably going to be more expensive in general, but it's basically the same kind of format. You're going to have a kill team leader. You're going to have some standard gangers or kill team members. You're going to have your specialists, which are heavies, and then you're going to have your fresh recruits. In kill team, it's essentially the same thing. Shadow War Armageddon, the kill teams are essentially the same thing in terms of recruiting. I've been building lists using the kill team rosters available on GamesWorkshop.com. If you go to the Shadow War Armageddon box set, you can go down, click on the link in the rules section there, and actually look at all the different PDFs. I've been putting together some Gene Stealer Cult stuff, Eldar stuff, Chaos Space Marines. It's just a lot of fun to kind of put them together, using the points and stuff like that. So each kill team is also going to have, aside from their different folks you can recruit, all the available, they're basically their armory, the stuff you have to equip them with. You do have to buy them weapons. Not all guys come with weapons. Sometimes it's just, for example, the scouts in here only come with a combat knife, and you have to buy them a bolt pistol, things like that. But you put your stuff together. Here are some of the kill team requirements. You have to have a minimum of 3 fighters, and again, that's going to depend to some of the kill team. It's going to be hard to squeeze 3 fighters. For example, the Tyranid Warriors are 200 points a pop. So 3 Warriors you're already at 600 points, and you haven't even bought any upgrades yet. So keep that in mind. You have to have a maximum number of fighters, and that's going to vary depending on the kill team. Again, check those out. You have to have at least 1 leader. You can have as many troopers as you want. Kill team can have up to 2 specialists, depending on the kill team. And the new recruits, no more than half the kill team can be made up of new recruits. That's, again, counting all your leaders, heavies, and troopers all together. So, yeah, cool stuff here. Flipping ahead. Oh, let me just show this off real fast, too. They do give you a kill team roster, which you do have permission to photocopy. We're going to skip over to the weapon profiles in the back real quick. There's another look at the turn sequence. These are all the quick reference areas, which are super important. And then we've seen the before and after stuff as well. And then here's a little sneak peek at the special operatives, for example. If you go to your FLGS, hopefully they got a retailer kit, and they're actually going to have cards that you can use to look at these. But for example here, for the Officio Perfectus Commissar, you can get a Commissar, Tech Priest Enginseer, an Ogren, or a Militarum Tempestus Scion as well. And these guys have different options here. If you're gonna notice, they don't have a points cost. None of these guys has a point cost. So how do you get a special operative? You pay a Prometheum cash, which is pretty awesome. But some of these guys, for example, the Ogren here, if the Ogren is down or out of action at the end of a mission, the enemy kill team secures an additional Prometheum cash. Keep in mind that if you are playing in a campaign, you're playing 215 Prometheum caches. So the first team to get that. So you gotta be smart about when you're gonna spend your Prometheum caches if it's to hire some recruits. If you're way down, it's probably a good time to loosen the coffers, as it were, and try to get caught back up. If you're way up, it might be a good time to spend a couple. But if you're somewhere in the middle, it's going to be a tough call on whether or not you want to risk it. So, but yeah, let's show off some of the skills real quick as well. This will be the last thing I show off. This is just some of the skill tables here. You've got the agility, muscle, shooting, and stealth skills. Your different kill teams are going to have different access to these. Your leaders, there's a chart you can reference there. But matter of fact, let's zoom in here and we'll just talk about the agility skill sets real quick. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So first point, you kind of roll randomly in here too if you level up in this thing, or depending on how you want to run your league, you may just choose stuff. But for instance, Catfall, we'll show that one off. If a fighter with Catfall skills falls, then they can make an initiative test. If the test is passed, they suffer no damage from the fall. though they will still be pinned. The fighter may also jump down distances of greater than 3 inches without falling, as long as they have sufficient movement. So it's just these type of advances you can get, which very small things, but they can add up, especially over time in a long campaign. You can get some pretty awesome fighters and things like that. So just to compare, let's check out the skill table right here. And you'll get a good idea of what I'm talking about here. Oh, hey, catfall. Look at that. Agility number 1. Model with catfall skill halves the distance falling when calculating the strength of any hits which result from falling round fractions down. Most of the time, it's going to result in not a whole lot of damage. But you get the idea. A lot of these are renamed and reworked. So if you were going to do a league, or if you wanted to, I don't know, combine some of your old Necromunda stuff, just pick which charts you're going to use and make sure everybody's using them, and then you have a really fun time running your league. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to show off today. Again, it is a bit of a teaser trailer there for what you can expect. But again, Shadow War Armageddon owes a lot to Necromunda, and the background owes a lot to Codex Armageddon. So if you have these 3 books, you basically got this book already. Well, not quite, but you get the idea. It's a pretty fun system. I am looking forward to hearing about all the different leagues that are popping up all over the place with people playing Shadow War Armageddon. I'm also looking forward to, I've said this before, messing around with that terrain, because I've already built the terrain kits and those are pretty fun. It's going to be a good time. So if you can get your hands on a copy, awesome. If not, just be patient. More copies are on the way. I'm AdamHarry from BoLS. Thanks again for watching. Have a good one.